Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is the very first ever HarperFiction Presents Book Club. And today, quite rightly, on the publication day of Postscript in paperback, it is Book Club with Cecelia Ahern. Hooray! Welcome, Cecilia.
Woohoo!
And welcome all those Cecilia fans and readers who are with us and who I know many of whom have been with Cecilia for the journey since P.S. I Love You. Postscript is the sequel to P.S. I Love You, so we thought it would be a great day to talk about both books. I am lucky enough to work with Cecilia right from the start, so to have edited both those books. And I guess lots of your fans, lots of the people watching this will know so much about you already, but just to recap, it's been a roller coaster time since we first worked together. P.S. I Love You sold to us on, I think, 10 or 12 chapters, and then you finished it and it sold to the US and it sold all around the world, and then you had that amazing film deal. And all that happened when I think you were still only 21, which was phenomenal. And since then, you've published 16 novels, including 2 young adult novels, Flawed and Perfect, a book of short stories, Raw, and you have also adapted your own work for television as well as creating Samantha Who as a unique series. So you've been quite busy.
Yeah.
3 children as well.
Yes, yeah, just they're my finest work.
I don't know how you fitted it all in, but just looping back for a second. So P.S. I Love You, the book that started all of this and the book that is so close to so many people's hearts, how did you, as a 21-year-old, come up with such a compelling and convincing novel about grief and loss and redemption?
So since I wrote that book, I realized that this is the question that you get asked most, like, how did you come up with the idea? So every single novel after, I can tell you exactly how I came up with the idea, because I'd often write it down and remind myself, I came up with this because or when. But for P.S. I Love You, because it was the first book, and I didn't think anybody would be asking me any of these questions, I simply do not know where exactly the idea came from. All I can tell you is that I remember the phase of my life. Like, I had just I'd just finished college. I just graduated from college, and I just turned 21. So I was about to do this master's in film production. And then I got the idea for P.S. I Love You. I think I'd been to a few funerals in a row where, very close friends of the family had passed away. And so I was in that kind of headspace of, what if, thinking about losing the people that I love, like my parents or my boyfriend, because I was still with my husband then. I was with my husband. My now husband was my boyfriend. And I just was thinking of how awful it would be to lose the people that you love. And how would I be able to hold on to them in some kind of way? And so I created this story about Holly, who was a young widow who lost her husband, and he had written these letters to her, one a month, to help her keep going. So I think it was a mixture of me being in that in-between phase of my life, kind of attending those funerals and really questioning. I call it my quarter-life crisis.
Yeah.
And I wanted to turn something kind of so sad into something hopeful, that even though you lose somebody, there's still such a huge part of them in writing and in letters and the magic of writing. And that's it's really hard to say where it came from, because I don't remember that one moment, but I do remember the moment I sat down to write it. And I think it had been going around in my head for a little while, like for, I think, only days, but like extremely, in my head. And I thought, I have to sit down and write this, which I had been doing like all the time, because I was always writing for myself. So I wrote the time, the date, and then off I went. Did not think I was writing a novel. Didn't think that I was going to share it with anyone. But it was keeping me up all night. I was writing from 10 till 6 a.m. and then I was sleeping for half the day.
Oh.
And so I knew, and then I shared it with my mom, and she was really supportive, and she's a very honest person. She doesn't support everything I do, and she was like, you should really send this to somebody and see, just see where it goes. And that's how it all happened.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, and it's so interesting what you say there, about the letter writing, because of course these days people don't write letters so much. Everything's moved online. But do you, both books, P.S. I Love You and Postscript, feature the act of actually writing letters? And do you feel like that's really important as an expression of love or deeper feelings? Do you feel like it's an expression of what we're going through? Would you like to see it brought, more people start to do it again?
So I don't necessarily write people letters, but obviously I write. So I write longhand when I'm writing a novel, and up to that point I was writing a novel, a diary every day. So like for me, it was really always about putting how I felt on paper, and that was my way of expressing myself. I'm not a very eloquent person, which we'll discover for the next hour, and I forget a lot of information, and I don't structure sentences well and all that. But as soon as I write, suddenly all this stuff like just flows, and I always feel better after it. And so I always think that when people write, there's just the kind of, maybe the true self comes out, and it's the less kind of self-conscious self, and it kind of flows better. And I think, always if I'm reading like a card or a letter from my mom or dad, like even seeing the handwriting,
that's right.
About the person, you think some people have got it together and they'll have real messy handwriting, and I'm always surprised, and then some people that you don't think would have this beautiful script, and that for me it kind of says a lot about the type of person from their handwriting. I don't know what it says, but it just it's always just surprising. So it's all that in it.
I know, it's I think it is fascinating, and one of the, I think, genius things about P.S. I Love You is that it does lots of different things for different people. Yes, it's about grief, but it is, as you say, also about hope. It's about friendship, and it's a great, great love story. And I think that's why it connected so strongly all around the world. And I know you felt surprised, understandably, by the reaction and the kind of huge bestseller that it became. But how did you start to get that sense of the fans' responses to it? Because it was in a pre-social media world. So did you start to pick up from book signings or from fan mail, or just the same
things? Yeah, well, the first response was obviously publishers, which was huge. But and that was, there was a lot of conversations with a lot of different people from all around the world who couldn't believe, it was always like, how are you so young? Have you experienced this? And I always felt, first of all, you write something, I think at particularly that age, I felt a bit shy about it and a bit embarrassed, like, oh, I might have got this completely wrong. But I don't know if I ever thought I got it completely right. And that was my surprise when people who had lost loved ones said, well, this was exactly my experience of grief, or like it felt therapeutic, or people who said that their therapist had recommended it for them to read because it would help them through their grief. Like, and I, writing was never my intention when writing, to be somebody else's therapist. It was really definitely helping me. And that's when I thought, wow, imagine the thing that sitting in your pajamas at the kitchen table at 4:00 in the morning, kind of plucking things from your head, can be somebody else's experience. Like, no matter where you are in the world, we can really feel and experience the same things. And that has been a huge lesson for every novel that I write. No matter how wacky some of my ideas have been, I always think there's somebody out there who might experience this, and I definitely have to do it justice and take it seriously, and kind of, I'm trying to put all of my real human emotions into it to make it real. Even though I don't know, even though I'm not the character, I haven't experienced that. But sorry, to answer your question properly, definitely so many letters. I think I've received more letters about P.S. I Love You than any other novel. And then I did a lot of events, because that was, I think I was traveled all around the world, and at every event somebody would tell me a story. And maybe the loved one I remember my very first event in San Francisco, and a woman told me that her dad had died during the summer, And at Christmas, she went up to the attic and took out a box of Christmas decorations, and she found a box of presents that were all labeled to each member of the family. And that stayed with me. Like, that must have been in 2004 that I did that to her. And that's why I actually put that into Postscript.
Yeah.
I wanted to take some of those stories that I'd heard, the real stories, the real P.S. I Love You stories, and put them into the sequel.
Yeah, that's so compelling, isn't it? And I think you're right, those human stories just reach all around the world. And I know also for you it was a strange time, because as you say, you were suddenly being published all around the world, and you had to adjust to being an author and having contracts and events and book tours and publicity. And was that a kind of massive change, trying to fit that around your writing?
Lynn, I came from college.
Yeah.
I was a student. I was so far removed from that kind of world, and yet writing, I always felt I was very comfortable with writing, but not sitting on a stage with like Frank McCourt and talking about writing. Do you know what I mean? That's a totally different level.
Yeah.
It was incredibly I did feel like, do I know what I'm talking about? And it did take a long time for me to realize, I bloody wrote this book. I do know what I'm talking about. And every writer has a different experience and has a different way of doing things. But, very intimidating to sit in so many other people's company and have those conversations. What was my process? And I'm 22 going, my process? Like, I wrote all night with a pen and paper. What else, So, and in a way, it was a lovely process, the most kind of natural of them all.
Yeah.
But, it was, and then sitting at meetings with you guys, like, I didn't know what you were talking about. I didn't. And I was sitting there, we were talking about, like, paperbacks and trade paperbacks. I'm like, well, okay, so it comes out twice. Okay, I didn't know it came out twice. I don't know why my book came out. Like, so much I didn't understand.
Fair enough. I mean, it's a lesson to us as a business. We're very inward looking. We assume everyone understands everything. And what you were telling me earlier about word count, like you didn't know how to,
so I have my book here because I knew we were having this conversation. I kept so much from back then. I even kept our first emails that you and I had, but I couldn't actually
them.
I know. Yeah, I should. And they are what inspired Love Rosie, because I would read back over all my emails of how everything happened, and that would tell a story. And I thought, I'm going to write a book in emails, and that's another conversation.
Yes.
P.S. I Love You. Oh, it's in bits. Like, it's literally from a college student.
Oh my God, I've never set eyes on that.
It's going to fall apart as well, so they'll be happy. Look at this for the first page. All right, I had it called The List.
Yeah, I think P.S. I Love You is better.
11th of October 2002, 2 a.m. And the first few lines are exactly the same as the printed book. And I have here number 10. So I already knew what my last one was going to be. Don't be afraid to fall in love. So,
and we carried that right through to Postscript.
True, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Please, can you take a picture of that first page?
I have titles on the back of this. Messages from Above. Mail from Heaven. And then really, really clever. Mail, M-A-L-E from Heaven. Which sounds like, I don't know what that is. But anyway, so you were asking me about the word count.
I'm glad you went with P.S. I Love You.
God, for P.S. I Love You, which Marianne Gunn O'Connor has to take credit for. That was her idea.
Oh my God.
So word count. I did not know that there was word count on a computer. And we had this really dodgy home computer at the top of the stairs that we had to just use for assignments. And I realized in signing the contract that it had to be a certain amount of words, something like between 70 and 100,000 words or something like that. And then I went, but how much is that? So I actually bought books and counted how many words were in one page, multiplied it, and then I have this word, chapter 1, 8,137 words, all the way to the end. Total word count, 116,000. That was a different one I found. And so that was my really clever system of how I Like I would count the words on my handwritten page.
That's quite labor intensive. Yeah. Thank God,
Ridiculous, isn't it?
thank God for computers, I say. And
So funny.
it is amazing to see that. It is kind of magical, because I've never even seen that version.
I go, when I do events, there's people with their pen and paper, and I know that those people are the people that want to write books.
Yeah.
And they're like, what is the magical thing that you do to write a book or to get it published? And that just shows you all you do is sit down with a pen and paper or your computer or however, and you write the story. Because I didn't know, if I had known anything really about publishing, I probably wouldn't have done it, because you know how big and terrifying it can be. So it's just about you and your story. There's no secrets. Like, I didn't even know about a word count. And I only learned about find and replace like a couple of books in.
Now, quickly, because we obviously want to get onto Postscript out today, but just talk to me quickly, because the other amazing thing that happened at that time was, of course, the film. The film got made, not just sold for film, but the film was made. Did you get to go on set? Did you get to meet the actors? How did you feel about it?
I was so excited. The film deal was done way at the beginning, at the same time as the book deal, like just maybe a couple of months later. So it was also new. Warner Brothers bought the rights, and then I think it was I don't know, what year do you remember? Was it 2007 that it came out?
Yeah, 6 or 7, something like that. 7?
Pre-babies, and like my life before babies and life after. I think it was 2007. So it was made quite quickly in terms of, into the film world. And I just absolutely loved it. I'd had no involvement in the script. I actually didn't even see the script, to be honest with you. And I remember going on doing some interviews about it on set, and quickly realizing that the questions he was asking me did not match up to the events in my book. But so I was quite distant from the creative process of it, but it was on set, met all the actors who were amazing. Hilary Swank was amazing. Jerry Butler, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Kathy Bates, Lisa Kudrow, Gina Gershon, Harry Connick Jr. They were all just even sitting there watching them, going from themselves to character. I always find that really exciting. But I think what I felt most excited about was, I felt like, I remember when I saw Jerry for the first time, who actually had Jared, who had the same name as Jerry. I just felt like that the characters from my book had just come alive, like they'd out of the pages. And I remember being on set in Whelan's, and there were hundreds of extras and crew, and my mom came with me, and she just said, "Look what you started." And it was so lovely, because it's yes, I didn't create this, but I started it, and it was
set the ball rolling. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, set the ball rolling, and look what happened. Kitchen table in your pajamas. Look what can happen. And so it was very emotional, the whole thing. Watching the movie, cried my eyes out. We all just held hands and cried.
Yeah.
So I adored it. It was a very personal experience, and it did so much for the book, even though it was a very different story. It just relaunched it as well, and opened it up to a wider audience. So I'm forever grateful.
It's so fantastic, I think, that it still plays today on telly, and also we all meet people who say it's one of their favourite films.
Yeah.
And it's easy to get very hung up on, but it's different to the book, or they changed some stuff. But usually the best films do. They can't replicate one to the other perfectly. So that's tricky to do. So let's just talk about Postscript for a minute. I know that your fans wanted a sequel, and you were asked sometimes whether you would ever write one, and you didn't think you would. And then all of a sudden, it came to you. Tell people how that began.
This is the book I said I'd never write. I just was never, ever going to do this, because I had brought Holly to the place where I was perfectly happy. It's beautiful, beautiful cover. I brought it to a place where I didn't know where else to bring her. I'd finished the story.
Yeah.
So there was that. There was also the fact that I wanted to keep writing different characters and different stories, because how I like to jump about with very different feel in every novel. So I felt like going back was a bit of a I don't know, laziness or something. It's not something I wanted to do. And then thirdly, PSLW was such a success that why would I revisit something like that? That's the book that made me. Will Postscript be the book that breaks me? And I had that kind of fear. So in 2012, I had my second child, and I was going to, rewrite the will. And in that moment, I thought about, God, the things that people do in preparation for when they leave, in preparation for the people they leave behind. And it just occurred to me, I'm like, wow, if I was ever going to do the sequel to P.S. I Love You, it's like, I suppose it seems so obvious now, but to me it was like a moment where I never thought of writing it from a different perspective, and from the perspective of the people who were leaving people behind. And so it just seems like such a ping moment.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get it out of my head. I could have written it as a original, like as a not sequel, but I really wanted to put Holly into the story because I felt that would be a perfect way of her being able to view it from Jerry's perspective, and her learning all over again what this journey was all about, and questioning whether it was right for her or not right for her. Was he helping her? Did he hinder her? There was just so much I felt I could do with it. And I wrote it secretly for myself, the first couple of chapters, to see if it moved me, and I ugly cried the whole way through.
Yeah.
I think at that stage I told you, when I knew it was powerful enough to write and I was excited about it.
Yeah.
I told you guys, and actually you were brilliant, because I remember, I think I had it in my head that, oh, everyone wants me to write a sequel, that's so, and I kind of got stubborn about it, and a bit, I blocked it. And then when I said it to you, you're like, well, you know what? We don't really want you to write a sequel, only if you want to write the sequel.
Yeah.
And then I felt, oh, wait, everyone's not waiting for this. So then I felt, oh, I might surprise people, and this will be something different.
Yeah.
And that really, and that was lovely. The pressure wasn't on me. I felt like, oh, I need to make everyone excited about this now. So
yeah. And I think, for me, that was definitely the case, that when you said to me that you might go back and revisit the story, like you, I was just thinking, but what else is there to do? How will you do that? So I didn't want you to do it out of a kind of, oh, it's so popular, I'll just write some more of it, which would be so unlike you anyway. But the minute you said to me, it almost starts with the club, and then Holly is asked to help them, and Holly isn't keen to help them, but it makes Holly reassess her own kind of journey, then I could see it was a whole new book, and that's when it became exciting. And even then it took you a little while to be ready to write it.
Yeah, a couple of years after that.
Yeah.
So because I had to reread P.S. I Love You, and
did that take you a couple of years?
I was like this. Well, I was reading from that dodgy manuscript. It took me, I kind of had to, it was like almost studying my own work then, and that's so cringe. And I was trying to find the gaps and the holes and the seeds of where I planted some ideas that I could bring on then in the sequel. And it actually became really fun then. It was like the most challenging book I've ever written, when I thought it was going to be like so obvious, the most obvious book I'd ever written. It was the complete opposite. Then I had to decide, well, which characters, how am I going to write it 10 years or more on, like 13, 14?
Yeah.
It wasn't that appealing. And so I came up with the idea of writing it 7 years on, because of that theory of every 7 years become a different kind of version of yourself. And which I very much believe in and buy into. And so this is kind of Holly entering that next phase of her life. And then it all just started to fall into place. And it is more about the club and her helping them. And in the same way that I was looking back and kind of picking holes in the story, Holly's also looking back and thinking, if she's going to be advising other people, did Jerry do the best thing for her? What did she like about the letters? What did she not like? In a way, he stopped her from moving on, because, he kept every month that came, she was like holding on and waiting for another letter to guide her, instead of just going out and living her life in a way. And so I think it's kind of a real honest look.
I love that perspective. I love that part of it. And that's what stopped it being saccharine for me, is it's not Holly and Jerry and Aspic kind of preserved as perfect. she does have to look at her relationship with him, and she does really question whether his gift to her in some ways also was restrictive, or and it doesn't stop her loving him, it doesn't stop her loving their life together. But I really felt like you addressed that with a lot of maturity, and I think it's probably also one of your novels where we've been back and forth the most on the edits, and you changing quite big stuff in between drafts.
And before you even read it, you'd want to see. I had some mad stuff in there, and it was on the back of Roar, which is the collection of short stories which were quirky and whimsical and weird, and they had received such amazing reviews, and I think picked up by people who wouldn't usually read my book. And then we were heading back to something from the beginning of my career, and I was like, well, what do I do? Do I try and infuse a bit of the new me into this? There's a version that was like, whoa! So there was a bit of Roar, like that kind of voice with Postscript, and it majorly clashed. It just clashed so much, so I had to just go back to the tone of P.S. I Love You, but with more maturity. P.S. I Love You is kind of quite innocent in a way, and Holly is probably my most kind of, even though I felt I made her well-rounded, kind of the most innocent character of all. She's like, not as complex as characters that I've had, further down the road. So I was trying to give her a bit of oomph. And so sometimes I went overboard with the oomph, and just had to find that had to find a kind of lovely mix of what it was, but also who I am now.
Yeah. And then possibly some exciting film developments on Postscript as well. Can you tell anyone anything?
Yeah, a little bit. So when we announced Postscript, Hilary Swank emailed and said she'd love to read it, and it's funny, a lot of people involved in PS the movie said that no matter how many other projects they've done, or that is the one that they get spoken to about the most. Yeah, P.S. I Love You has touched people the most, and so I'm not going to say everybody is in all the cast, but I mean production wise, everyone was just so excited to get back on board, and it was like a little reunion. So there's a writer that I've spoken to, and I've read I suppose a version of her pitch, or her which was amazing, and I cried, and that's a very kind of they're very kind of not cold, but they're like very like a pitch isn't exactly the most moving, emotional thing, and which I found very emotional. So if that made me cry, then I don't know what the actual movie will be like. So it's just, it is, it's happening, and it's going to film. I don't know when, because the world is upside down, but it's going to happen.
That would be so amazing. I just can't wait. So I've got some questions from some of the audience, but just before we move on to those, can you say anything about what you're working on now and what will come next?
So the next novel is Freckles. And I love this book, as you know, and it's based around the theory that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And that's an expression I heard that I just made me go bing, 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 And so it's about this character named Allegra Bird, who is a parking warden who believes in logic and order and rules. And when she hears this phrase, it just makes her question her life and the people that are in her life. And if she's going to be the average of the 5 people she spends the most time with, she really wants to reach out to specific 5 people that she admires, so that she can be the average of them. And I think that's a part of the story. Obviously, she's in a place in her life where where that becomes something she kind of becomes obsessed by, for a reason. But it is about, can you curate your life, or can you curate yourself by choosing the people that surround you? And that's
it's I can't wait for people to discover that next year, because it's a book that feels very now. It's a book about human connection and about how we all learn to be comfortable in our skin, isn't it? And
I suppose you're probably thinking, why is it called Freckles? But it is about how she's joining the dots in her life. There's a lot of pieces of her in different places, and she's trying to just get herself together. And so for me, it made sense. Her nickname was Freckles, and she's joining the dots of herself and her life.
Yeah, it's great. So I've just got we've just picked out a few of the fantastic questions that came in, just so that we are not here until dawn. First question is from Natalia, and it is: your characters are hugely relatable. Do you have a favourite, or one that was influenced by personal experience?
Well, I don't have a favourite, but it's usually the newest one I'm working on. So, so Allegra Bird, who we just spoke about. But I have started writing a new novel.
Tell me.
I know. So that person's kind of my new favorite, but I think that's way too far to be talking. Yeah, it's usually the most recent, but I would probably say that Holly in P.S. I Love You is first of all is my first character that I ever created, my first novel, and our journey was kind of mirroring each other, whereas that I was going through this quarter life crisis, and her life had fallen apart, and she was trying to find her place in the world, and she was receiving these letters that were guiding her. I was writing these letters in this book that was guiding me, and we were both a little bit broken and trying to find our identity, and at the end we found it. Like, I had this career, and my life went on a totally different direction, and so did hers. So I do feel, even though I'm not her and it's not my experience, I do feel a lot, I suppose I have a lot in common with Holly.
A connection, yeah. Aurora has said, unconditional love is a strong theme in P.S. I Love You. What inspired you to write about that?
About unconditional love?
I guess that the kind of straightforward purity of Jerry's love for Holly and wanting the best for her.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, when I was writing P.S. I Love You, it was about him guiding her and him thinking about her not being with him, and it's just this absolute friendship and true love that they have. In Postscript, though, I kind of unravel that a bit, and Holly is questioning. She's spending a lot of time with the PSA club. I can't speak. P.S. I Love You club, and I keep them. And she's learning from them that they're afraid. They're writing these letters and doing these things for the people they love because they're afraid of being forgotten. So, so I suppose it's hard for me to answer the first question about the first book when I've kind of unraveled it a bit in the next. But what's not beautiful about writing about someone who, even in their last months of life, is thinking only of you and your journey, so that's, you know, kind of a selfish thing.
No, I think it's true. All of your books talk about and write about how we as humans can help each other in lots of different ways, not always that unselfishly, but yeah, I think it's part of what makes your books such rewarding. Really.
Yeah, well, you said human connection, which is about what Freckles is about, but that is a very important thing to me. Kindness, human connection, and just, I always get afraid of people when I can't see their humanity.
Yeah.
So that's, to me, that is the ultimate romantic thing to do.
Yeah. Lisa has asked, the film P.S. I Love You deviates slightly from the plotline of the book. Is this an inevitable part of the process from book to film, and how much is Cecilia involved in the production process? I know we touched on this a little bit, but do you think it has to deviate, and would you be more involved on a future production, do you think?
Yeah, so since P.S. I Love You, I've been more involved in everything, and but I kind of think I'm easy to deal with because I love adaptation, and I think it's a totally different art. You know, they're not just rewriting my story, they're reinterpreting. You know, it's their own interpretation of my story, and it has to be told in a different way. You have to lose some characters, you have to create some new characters. There's a lot about the movie that I preferred. I thought Daniel was an amazing character. You know, he just became so much more fun than my Daniel.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of improvements, and there's a lot of things that are, I mean, you can't have, what are you going to do with 20 pages of introspection on the screen? You have to have action and movement and plot, 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 plot. So so I am really open. The only thing I don't like that's changed is if the message of the story is changed. I feel like, why are you making, what's the point of making it? What did you like about it? Did you just like the names of the characters? So when the message changes, I'm like, you've lost me on that one. And the tone of it, you want to be the same, and like, just so I suppose if it keeps its heart.
Yeah.
So I'm not
on board.
Yeah, I'm on board. Yeah, if it's, because I think that's kind of a respectful adaptation.
And I'd say there's a lot of value in that approach, because Where Rainbow's End was made as Love Rosie, and you've had work adapted in Germany, and that's because you're a working writer who's willing to be open to. Yeah,
I mean, there's so many writers who probably could have the opportunity and they don't want to because they don't want to see their work change. So I love film and I love TV, and so it's a world that I do want to be involved in.
Yeah.
And I think it's an honor to see my work up there. The fact that it's changed is exciting to me, so I am open to it.
Yeah. Next question is from Johanna, who says, how did Cecilia initially secure a book deal with HarperCollins, and what advice would she give for finding the right publisher to work with?
So this is a real Irish way this happens. I had written the first few chapters, and my mom had played golf with Moira Riley, the brilliant Moira Riley, who's did publicity with HarperCollins, and she said to her, who does Cecilia send her work to? What does she do? And Moira suggested Marianne Gwynne O'Connor, who is an agent. And so I sent my work to Marianne, and we're kind of going back and forth for quite a while. And after 10 chapters, she agreed to represent me, and then sent it to you on 10 chapters. And
she came in to see me.
Oh, right. Okay, sorry, I don't know that bit. That's your story, that bit. You can tell that bit. And then, not very long later, you kindly gave me a book deal. So it kind of breaks all the rules, I think, I don't know what discussion you guys had. That's your part of the story. But for me, it was pretty incredible.
Yeah, I know it is. I think some of it is that finding that way in. We always say try and work with an agent, because an agent will know the right publisher to work with, because that is their job. They will take a cut of your income in return for managing the business of who you are published by and how you're published. So we always in the UK recommend the Writers and Artists Yearbook, but also look in books you enjoy and see who authors' agents are, and look on their websites, look on social media, see what they have to say about whether they're taking on new clients. And also there are other routes to finding readers now. You can self-publish, you can publish with a digital publisher who are quicker to market sometimes and more directly connected with readers in some ways, but won't necessarily give you a print outing. So there are lots of different routes to finding the right publisher. And I think, as you said, Cecilia, it sort of comes back to write your book, write the best book you can, and just work and work and work your socks off on that. Nail what makes your book unique, why it's your book, and trust that you will then find your publisher.
Yeah.
And last question from audience members is from Sissy, who has asked, will there be another chapter in Holly Kennedy's story?
I remember sending you the final draft, or the final draft, which we had seen many of, where I just completely changed so much. I remember I just killed off a character that had been in the whole thing.
Yeah.
And at the end, I excitedly said, this could be a trilogy. Because I loved Ginica so much.
Yeah.
That I could have told the story. As I was getting to the end, I was like, maybe I just write it from her perspective. And then I thought, oh, maybe that's what I'll do next time around. I think, though, I suppose I've learned to never say never, but I'm not planning to write another another story in the P.S. I Love You series. I
No.
think I think I've ended on quite a good note. I don't think I can cry anymore. I don't think I want to put myself through it anymore. It's just too much. It's too exhausting.
It's a lot. It is a lot. And you do it brilliantly, and you deal with these really sensitive subjects of grief and bereavement and how we all have to go through this. And we're not very good, certainly in the UK, possibly slightly better in Ireland, but we generally don't talk about it as much as we should. We don't deal with it well. We don't know what to say to people. We don't acknowledge it. And I think the brilliant thing in both your books, and I can see why you wouldn't necessarily want to go there again, is you deal with it in a very human and loving and inclusive way that makes it possible for us all to accept the deaths of people close to us. So well done.
Thank you.
I would like to say that.
Thank you for assisting me in that emotional, exhausting journey. We got there.
So 3 quick fire questions and then we're done. A quick reminder, of course, that Postscript is out today. But my quick fire questions for you are, who's your favourite author?
No, you see, I prepared for this and you can't make a quick fire. I put time into this.
Right, then.
Are we running out of time?
No, we can have as much time as we like.
Well, I love The Time Traveller's Wife by Audrey Niffenegger. I love Sarah Crossan, and this is her new one.
Oh, yes.
Here is the
That looks so beautiful.
I'm like, eat it.
Yeah, stunning.
And then, am I allowed to mention like other publishers? No.
Yes.
Okay. I also love Ruthie Carr. Am I allowed?
Yes.
Sumner Flowers, Milk and Honey. I'm reading a lot of poetry lately. I'm reading at the moment Soft Tissue, which is poetry, which is beautiful. Soft Tissue. And so One World Publishers publish books from all around the world, translated works. And I just basically go onto their list and order everything because I just love, for some reason I'm really drawn to like Japanese books and Korean. So here's The Hen Who Dreamed She Could Fly.
Oh, yes, I love that jacket. It is so beautiful.
Gorgeous. And I love this story. It's like a classic now, apparently. And books like Sweet Bean Paste, The Tiger and the Acrobat. Are we running out of time now?
No, we're fine. I'm fascinated. I want to read them all. That is beautiful as well.
Cat, a Man and Two Women. Like they're really kind of quirky and small. Like you read it and not very quickly. And you know, The Particular Sadness of Lemon Cake is
that's always been
one of my favorites.
Yeah,
all those. And I can never remember the names or anything. That's why I brought them all with me. But I love Karen Slaughter. I love Jane Casey, and I love Lee Child and Tana French. And like I'm nutty obsessed with all of those authors and read all of their books every year. And so I go from like crime to Korean, Japanese. Yeah, I love everything. Poetry, yeah.
It's good. It's good for the imagination. Yeah. So second question, where is your favourite place in the world?
Oh, Kerry in the south, north, south, east, west, southwest of Ireland. County Kerry is the most, it's like, it feeds my soul. Yeah. You know, one of these places that you need to just like recharge yourself, Kerry.
Yeah, fantastic. And third and final question, who are the guests at your dream dinner party? Your hosting. But you don't have to cook. You can order, delivery.
Eddie Murphy.
Okay.
Dave Chappelle.
Uh-huh.
Like the entire cast of SNL. Melissa McCarthy.
It'd be a raucous one.
Oh, it would be just so funny, but philosophical.
Yes.
Because, I think Dave Chappelle's a philosopher, not just a comedian, and I just love those kind of clever insights with a bit of humor.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of, You have
a great night. I want to be there.
I wouldn't say anything, by the way. I would just sit there going. I would be the worst guest because I would just listen.
Right, you could be serving the delivery, lovely, delicious food.
I should be eating.
Soaking it all up, yeah. Okay, so I am going to wrap this up. People have got drinks to make, dinner to eat, whatever, but I want to say a big, big thank you for, it's been so much fun talking to you. We've only skated over the surface of our many years of editing books together and publishing them. But like you, I think this looks so beautiful, and I'm so excited that it's out in the world today. I want to say a big thank you for talking to us and sharing your time with everyone and sharing that first ever sight of the manuscript. HarperFiction Presents will be continuing to do book club, and you can follow us on our YouTube channel and see more from our authors. But for today, big thank you to everyone for joining us and listening to Book Club with Cecelia Ahern.
Thank you, Lynne. And thank you for how many years? 2002? 18 years. I think you're the longest relationship I've ever had. No, my husband is. You and my husband are the longest relationship I've ever had.
Very good. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.